Welcome to Spotlights, a series of online events and publications focusing on a particular group of victim survivors who are often hidden from services. Continuing on from our interview with Jasvinder Sangira, CBE, and founder and CEO of Nirvana, here my colleague Deirdre speaks to both Jasvinder and Priya Manora, the Helpline Manager for Nirvana's National Helpline. In her interview, Priya speaks about her own inspiration for the work she does, the experiences of the victims, survivors and professionals she supports on a daily basis, and emphasises the need for awareness and understanding amongst professionals regarding the rights and remedies available to victims of honour-based violence and forced marriage. We hope you find this podcast as informative as we have.
So Priya, you're the manager of the National Support Line for Nirvana. Can you tell me a bit about yourself, what led you to do this work and how long you've been doing it for?
So I have been with Nirvana since 2009 and I started off as a volunteer myself. And the thing that brought me to Nirvana actually, in fact, was Jasvinder's book, Shame.
Okay.
So I'd read that as a university student.
Yeah.
Read it in a day. Couldn't put it down, and then just decided that from there I wanted to help, and then Nirvana had a training program in 2009, and funnily enough I graduated that year, so I came on to the volunteer program, and then when a job opportunity came up I applied and I started as a senior call handler, so that was me then working on the helpline, and that was 7 years ago, and then I've just sort of developed from there into the role of the helpline manager. I still get to take calls and support victims and survivors and professionals on the helpline. So that's really sort of how I came about at Nirvana and where I am now.
Great. And can you tell me a bit about the support line? Who is it for?
Sure. So the helpline runs Monday to 7 days a week now.
Yeah.
But Monday to Friday it runs 9 o'clock in the morning till 9 p.m. at night, and then on Saturday and Sunday we're here from 10 till 4.
Yeah.
So we support anybody, men, women, children who may be affected by forced marriage and honour-based abuse. And what our call handlers will do, they're all trained to provide practical and emotional support to victims and survivors. What we do also get, and 42%, as you will have heard Jasvinder say, 42% of our calls are from professionals.
Yep.
So the call handlers are not only just supporting and are trained to support victims and survivors, they're also trained to support those professionals as well. So that can range from police officers to social workers to teachers and health professionals. And what we will do is we'll provide emotional support, we'll provide practical support, we'll provide advocacy and signpost people as well onto other services.
Great. So you said you've been with the organisation for 7 years, is that what you said?
That's right, yes, nearly 7 years. Yes,
Yeah.
it'll be 7 years coming up.
And how have you seen the support line change over those years, if it has changed?
It has changed incredibly,
Yeah.
massively changed. So when I first started at Nirvana, I was the only call handler, and one of my colleagues who worked part-time, and we now have 9 call handlers.
Wow.
So and then there's myself as well, so there's 10 helpline staff members, so that's just sort of an indication of how it's really grown. What we've seen is a pattern sort of in 2013 where it really spiked and we saw an increase in calls, and we were at the time going out and doing road shows, so those were sort of half-day presentations, multi-agency presentations, and often the police would help us to organise that, and we would invite health professionals, teachers, social workers, etc. to that event, also people from the voluntary sector, professionals from the voluntary sector as well. And from there the awareness increased, and we saw that impact on the helpline. Those professionals that attended those road shows, then they'd tell other colleagues, and that's how we saw a spike. And then we've just seen it increase from then. And then also with our out-of-hours service that started last August 2016, we've now seen an increase in those calls in the evenings, and we've seen that there was that need on an evening and a weekend, so we managed to secure some funding thankfully for that service. And now we're able to respond to those calls that come through, which are usually crisis calls that we find on an evening and weekend. So you've got women or men alike who have just turned up to police stations, and the police will be calling us saying, where can we put this person for the night? They've fled the family, they're going to be forced to marry. We've got a 16-year-old girl who has ran away from her family, fled the home because she was at risk of honour-based abuse, at risk of being taken abroad to be married, and and she's been taken to a women's refuge for her own safety, but she's now feeling isolated. So we're there, for those people, and they're the sort of calls we find are coming through during the evening and weekend.
Sounds like a high pressure job to have to know what to do in that moment of crisis.
Absolutely it is. I mean, we provide training to all the staff on the helpline. They do a fantastic job. But we all make sure that, and it's great because all the call handlers do debrief with one another during the day, and we'll talk about the sort of calls we've had. But they know that they have a support network of senior call handlers and myself as well. So, we'll talk to each other about things that come through and help each other through, those things, and come up with solutions together, really. About what we can do, but make sure that everybody's okay and they've switched off and left things, in the office before, they kind of head off, because it definitely is, a high pressure job, and you don't know what you're going to pick up on the phone. That's the thing. You could have, just a general inquiry by, from a professional, or it could be somebody in crisis situation who's at immediate risk, who's unsafe in their house and, needs to get out. So it's very rewarding though, and I have to say, from my 6 years that I was on the helpline taking those calls directly myself, every day was different. But every day you'd walk away and feel like you have made a difference. You have helped somebody.
Definitely. And over those years, have you seen the needs of the individuals that you've supported change at all? Talking both about the victims and survivors, but also the needs of professionals when it comes to development awareness. So I guess those are two questions.
Well, in terms of victims, it very much is, the same sort of things in terms of, wanting to get out or wanting, that advocacy support. Yeah. And with professionals, what we're finding is that there is that need for that awareness, that training and that education. Yeah. We are still finding today that professionals don't know what the statutory guidance is, albeit that's been around since 2007. I'm just echoing really what Jasmine just said, because this is what we hear from professionals on the helpline. We'll be telling them it's a criminal offence now, or there are civil orders that could protect somebody that's going to be forced to marry. And the statutory guidance that has been out since 2007, we have call handlers who have this document saved to their desktop because we send it out so much every week to social workers, to police officers, and that literally is, as Jasmine just said, they've got a toolbox, and that is a fantastic tool because it tells you what you should and should not be doing within that document, within that guidance, when you have a disclosure of a forced marriage. So I would really encourage professionals to get on, to the contact us, and we can send it to you. But it's there. It's on the government's website, on the forced marriage section of the DirectGov website. This multi-agency statutory guidance. Read that, and and sort of that will educate you in terms of how to respond to these victims. Yeah.
Can I, if I may, just come in on the needs of survivors changing?
Yeah.
One of the things that we have clearly ensured is that we give voice to the experiences of victims and survivors since 93 to date. And one of the pressing needs that Nirvana have noticed is that when that person leaves, there's no support for them at all. Yeah. Okay, you can place somebody into a refuge, the journey starts there. We're talking about a victim who is fleeing multiple perpetrators, who is more than likely going to be ostracised by their family and disowned, as I was, and then having to live a life completely on their own, very often on the run, having to change their identity to be safe, missing their families terribly, and there's no connection, and their identities are completely fractured. The pressure to go back to their family is always high, because they're missing them. Yeah. That if that missing consumes them, they'll go back. The family will promise them everything, and they'll go back. Just little pieces of their family. They don't get birthday cards. They've got nobody to celebrate Eid, Diwali, or Christmas with anymore. They've just been cast out. So what we know is that's a huge void
Yeah.
And we've been developing the Survivor Ambassador Programme within Nirvana for the last 4 years. We're launching it on June the 19th at the House of Lords. And this is the vision, to develop a Survivor Ambassador Network, so that they have a membership network that they can tap into to feel part of something in their isolation.
Yeah.
So we will do things like send them newsletters of the great success stories of survivors who are making it every single day and coming out the other end, who's graduated, who's had kids, albeit without their family. We will send them birthday cards at that time of the year when you're missing your family more, so they're able to tap into it. Alongside that, we're launching the Survivor Ambassador website.
Yeah.
And also, we are encouraging the greater visibility of survivors, because any victim of any form of abuse feels alone and isolated, and very often you think it's only happening to you.
Yeah.
What's important is to hear about the empowerment of other survivors, because that will speak to the victim who's thinking about that decision, and also it will speak to that person who's left and is rebuilding their life. So that is a need that has clearly come out of our work, because as we increase reporting and we encourage survivors to leave abuse, there is another journey, and we have to recognise that journey needs supporting. So on the helpline also, Priya, I know that you'll get survivors calling in for emotional support around those sort of times in their life.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I was saying, you know, in the evening, in the weekends, we've certainly seen those things, because they don't have the support, for example, if they're in a refuge. But just generally, you know, when victims leave, it's a really difficult time. It's just the start of the journey, and that's why we're always encouraging victims and survivors on the helpline. We provide ongoing support, because we know that it is going to be a journey, and everybody's journey is different, and they will all develop at different stages. They've all had different experiences. They are all individuals, you know, but we are there to support them, because often they don't have anybody, and it's letting them know that you're not alone, you know, albeit in a professional capacity, we are just at the other end of the phone. And you know, often when they do feel that isolated or that alone, they do, as Jasmine just said, start having thoughts about wanting to return, and often that can be the most dangerous thing for them. But if they don't have anybody around, they think, well, you know, they've just gone from one situation that wasn't, you know, that was not very good, nice for them, and you know, that they didn't feel comfortable in, or they weren't safe, or they were at risk, to just another situation where you know, they're not happy. So
it doesn't sound like much of a choice, really. It's you choose to be completely ostracized and alone and scared with no support, or you choose to be forced into a situation. Like neither sound like a choice.
But our victims are incredibly vulnerable, because they've never been allowed to integrate, have independence, freedom of thought. So all of a sudden they're in the real world, quite naive and vulnerable. You know, how do you manage freedom? How do you manage living a life without an honour system? And all those rebuilding your belief and value systems and attracting unsavoury characters. They can be targeted for sexual exploitation. You know, desperate for healthy relationships, a relationship, never having a model of a relationship, and then a bit of attention. You know, so they are. So the Survivor Ambassador Programme is got to be that space for those individuals to tap into it. I'm really excited about it, and you know, it is directly come out of the need, and I'm hoping the membership would develop through the support of organisations and through the helpline as well, where you know, survivors will be encouraged to become part of that. I can tell you, I've never had a birthday card from one member of my family since I was 16 years old. I gave birth to 3 children, no mother was there. I have grandchildren now. You know, my daughter was married, no family there. So, you know, at those times you feel it. I'm 52 this year. I'm still a survivor on that journey. I'm human. You know, so, you know, at the end of the day, it's important for survivors to recognise it's a shared journey, but it's one you can overcome, and this is what the programme will do.
It sounds like an amazing programme.
We're excited.
Yeah, that sounds good. The other question I had is that I kind of thinking about how the needs of survivors change over time. I recently met with Dr. Sundari Anitha, and she talked about kind of a newly recognised form of abuse that's developed around transnational marriage abandonment, and how she thinks it's one that's kind of developed kind of in response to DV concession, kind of perpetrators using new means of controlling, coercing and isolating their partners, especially when they want to leave that relationship. Is that something that you've seen as a newly recognised form of abuse, one that's already been there for a long time?
I think we've been dealing with it for quite a few years now, and I think it's Jasmine may agree that there have probably been people when, before the helpline, that, when the project had just started, when the charity had just started. But, it's something certainly that on the helpline we never sort of provided training around. We sort of set up to support, we're a UK-based charity, but then we are getting calls from women who are within the UK, or men alike, who have been, sponsored into the country as somebody's, husband or wife, and then experienced that abuse from there. But there's domestic abuse within that, but there's also honour-based abuse, not just from the in-laws, but often, we'll have women saying to us that if I go back, I don't want to be with this man, and I could get a divorce, but if I go back, then I'm at risk. I'll either be forced to marry somebody else, or I'll be killed in many cases. So, we are hearing, we've seen that sort of over the last, I would say, 6 or 7, certainly since I've been, at Carmen Nirvana. We used to have the Sojourner Project when I first started, and then that sort of merged into the DV concession, which we have now.
Yeah. I think those are all of my questions, unless you had anything else that you felt you really wanted to say.
I think men, actually, Priya. We've not spoken about men, and we do support men.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I mentioned in my introduction that we will support anybody.
Yep.
But I think it's certainly an important one because we do support men.
Yep.
And we're seeing an increase, in calls for men. We went from 14% to 17%, and now we're on 24%. Of calls for men, and we would strongly encourage men to come forward because they are affected. It's not an issue which sort of judges you by on your gender. It can affect anybody. And we know that men contact us. They'll feel things like should I really be contacting? I'm a man. Should I just be getting on with it? As I'm sure for other types of abuses as well. Some we hear that men sort of have the same feelings. They feel the same way. But we would encourage men to contact us because they are victims and they deserve that support equally. And and all our helpline staff, as I said, are trained to provide that support. There are specific services for men as well, such as we have women's refuges. There are refuges for men. We've supported many men to leave those situations safely. So it may be that they have been forced to marry and they've returned back to the UK and been forced to marry abroad, and they want to leave because they don't feel safe. Because the additional pressure on returning is you have to sponsor your wife to this country. You have to have a family with this person, and it's nothing that they want. They haven't consented to any of this. So, we may help them to move to safe accommodation in a male refuge. They may not want to sponsor that person over to this country. We will help them around, their feelings of being a reluctant sponsor, and providing emotional support. If they need the advocacy support to go to the police or whatever it might be, they have the access to the same support. We support anybody on the helpline.
That's really good to know. Thank you very much for having me come to your office and meet with you and talking to me. It's been really interesting.
Thank you for listening. If you'd like to find out more about SafeLives Spotlight on honour-based violence and forced marriage, please go to our website, safelives.org.uk, where we'll be uploading new content every week, each exploring a different aspect of honour-based violence and forced marriage. If you'd like to participate in the discussion, you can join in the live Twitter Q&A conversation on the 8th of June between 10 and 11 a.m. Just go to #yourchoice. And if you need to contact Carmen Nirvana, please give them a ring on 0800 5999 247. They're open 7 days a week, between 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. Monday to Friday, and 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. Saturday and Sunday.